Genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. You've probably heard this metaphor before, but is it actually true? And what does it mean for our personality, mental health, and our ability to change? Welcome back to Gentle Within. Today, we are going to talk about how genetics and environment work together to shape who we become, and whether our genes can actually change or not. So what does it mean when we say genes load the gun? It means that our genetics set up our predispositions. For example, a tendency towards depression, addiction, aggression, and even conditions like diabetes. Genes create the potential or risk we carry within us. The environment pulls the trigger. This means that these potentials only become reality when influenced by specific environmental factors like stress, trauma, upbringing, social isolation, and so on. In other words, the environment determines whether a genetic tendency will actually be expressed or remain inactive. A simple psychological example. A person may have genetic vulnerability to depression, for example, variations in the serotonin system, but the depression may never appear unless the person experiences specific environmental triggers such as loss of a loved one, chronic loneliness, or even lifestyle. So yes, genetic sensitivity exists, but without the environmental trigger, the gun may never fire. But does the environment really affect our genes? The answer is yes, but not by changing the DNA sequence itself. Instead, the environment influences how strongly certain genes are turned on or off. This field is called epigenetics. Epi means above or on top of. So epigenetics studies changes that happen on top of our genes without altering the DNA code. A simple analogy would be DNA is like a cookbook full of recipes. Epigenetics is like a set of bookmarks or sticky notes that determine which recipes actually get used and which remain unread. So how does the environment influence gene expression? What actually happens? Environmental experiences influence which genes are active through three main epigenetic mechanisms. Number one is DNA methylation, which is adding tiny chemical switches. DNA methylation happens when small chemical groups attach to specific places on the DNA strand. These chemical tags usually act like off switches, making a gene less active. Number two would be histone modifications. That means how tightly DNA is wrapped, because DNA is wrapped around proteins called histones, like thread around the spool. If the DNA is tightly wrapped, the genes in that region cannot be read and they are turned off. If it's loosely wrapped, the genes are easier to access. Environmental factors can add or remove chemical marks on histones, changing how tightly DNA is packed. For instance, chronic stress can modify histones so that genes linked to fear or reactivity become more active. Number three is regulatory RNA. They're molecules that decide which genes get read. There are different types of RNA molecules, and they don't become proteins, they actually act as controllers. One of their main roles is to attach to mRNA, which is the messenger copy of a gene. So when this molecule RNA attaches or binds to mRNA, it blocks it or even causes it to degrade. And the protein never gets made and the gene doesn't really get expressed. There is a classic study with rats which illustrates this beautifully and in a very simple way. Baby rats that receive lots of licking and grooming from their mothers develop less DNA methylation on stress-related genes, and they become calm and more resilient animals. On the other hand, rats that receive little maternal care show more methylation on the same genes, leading to higher stress reactivity and anxiety. And this is one of the most famous demonstrations of how early caregiving literally shapes gene expression. The best part is that epigenetic changes are reversible. Epigenetic marks can change throughout life. That means that harmful experiences do not define your permanent destiny, and positive experience can restore balance, such as psychotherapy, positive relationships, and a healthy lifestyle. All these things can shift gene expression towards resilience. Epigenetics is really important in psychology and therapy. It dissolves the old nature versus nurture debate, because now we know both are important and both interact constantly. It also explains why early experiences and trauma can have such long-lasting effects on the body, and it offers genuine hope. Our biology is not fixed. Healthy environment can change how genes are expressed. I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to subscribe. It helps the channel more than you think.